The ASUS ROG Zephyrus G16 with the Ryzen 9 AI HX 370. The review you've all been waiting for. Let's get into it. You saw it here first. Once again, I'm Cameron, and this is Gamer vs. Tech.
Something that was real.
So let me start off by saying it has taken me an incredibly long time to do this review. That being said, this is the most thorough I've ever been doing a review. I have discovered the ins and outs of this beautiful laptop. I've discovered some problems, and I've discovered the fixes. I've done benchmarking, tons of gameplay. Let's get into it. So first, which version do I have? I have this beautiful gray version that comes in a 4070 and 32 gigabytes of RAM. Specifically, the model number on this one right here is GA605WI. As far as specs go, there's quite a few versions available. So far, only 2 of them you can purchase right now. The other 2, I will get to that a little bit later. As far as specs go, they all have Windows 11 Pro, the Ryzen 9 AI HX 370 processor with 12 cores, 24 threads, and up to 50 tops. There are 2 versions of graphics cards available, a 4060 or 4070. The 4060 runs at 100 watts, the 4070 runs at 105 watts. They all have 8 gigs of GDDR6 VRAM. They all have the AMD XDNA NPU up to 50 tops. And they all have the same display, a 2.5K 16:10 aspect ratio, HDR, OLED, absolutely amazing display. They call this the ROG Nebula display. As far as memory goes, it's available in either 16 gigabytes or 32 gigabytes. As far as the 16 gigabyte version goes, it does only come in white. As far as the storage goes, it either comes in a 1 terabyte version or a 2 terabyte version. The 2 terabyte version is the max model you can get. As far as I/O goes, they all have a 3.5 millimeter audio jack, 1 HDMI 2.1, 2 USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type A's, 1 USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type C that supports DisplayPort and power delivery, 1 USB-C 4.0 or USB-C 4 supports for DisplayPort and power delivery, and 1 card reader SD card, and it's SD Express 7.0. They're all rocking the same keyboard and touchpad. They're all rocking the same camera with infrared and Windows Hello capability. As far as audio goes, it has smart amp technology, Dolby Atmos, AI noise canceling, high-res certification with a built-in 3 microphone array, 4 speaker dual force subwoofer subsystem, and a smart amplifier technology with 2 tweeters. Network and communication here, they all have Wi-Fi 7 with Bluetooth 5.4. That Wi-Fi 7 is triple band. And one of the main selling points here is that battery. It has a 90 watt hour battery, which is beefy. Power supply, they all come with a 200 watt charger, and the weight is coming in at 4.08 pounds. When it comes to the display, remember, it's a 2.5K display. It has a 240 Hertz refresh rate and a response time of 0.2 milliseconds. Now, before I get into the review, I know everyone's gonna say, get rid of Armory Crate, get GHelper, which I do agree, but at the same time, I'm not gonna do GHelper in this review because I want this to be an out-of-the-box experience, and I'm not gonna tweak anything other than what ASUS gives you. So no GHelper here, only Armory Crate. You know what's really funny is when I first came out with the unboxing, a lot of people reached out and said that it wasn't the actual AI HX 370 version, that it was just an Intel version, and I was lying. That's not true. I did have the 370 version, and I've been testing it like crazy. So let me start off by saying that this laptop is absolutely incredible. Now, is it the best laptop there is? Not yet. There is some things that need to change in order to make this the best laptop ever. In my opinion, the 2024 G14 version worked a lot better out of the box compared to this. So what should we talk about first? Well, let's talk about the battery life. With that 90 watt hour battery, you can expect pretty damn good battery life. And the whole point of this brand new Ryzen 9 AI HX370 chip is that it's supposed to be incredibly power efficient compared to the Intel one. I can confirm that this laptop is substantially stronger, faster, and better, more power efficient than the Intel version that came out earlier this year. So let's cut to the chase. Battery life when browsing, expect 9 to 10 hours. I did some pretty extensive testing. I did it on multiple days, and I got between 9 and 10 hours. Now that is using the silent profile within Armoury Crate. I didn't test out performance profile with web browsing because that didn't make sense to me. But me personally, I got 9 to 10 hours, and that was scrolling through various websites. It's, that's a hard test to do because you got to be focused for 8 to 9 hours, 9 to 10. So at the end of the day, expect 9 to 10 hours. Now, what about YouTube? You're watching my channel all day. Expect 8 hours and 20 minutes watching YouTube in the silent performance profile on YouTube. Now, that being said, when I'm doing my test, I'm doing it with various things turned off and on. So for this silent profile, I had HDR on and I had RGB off. I had the screen set to 60 Hertz. So expect 8 hours and 20 minutes there. I had the screen brightness set to 50% across the board, as well as the sound set to a level of 25 across the board. In the performance profile, expect 6.5 hours of YouTube playback. That was HD or 4K. I was at 50% screen brightness, 60 Hertz. I was also HDR on, which is awesome. Expect 7.5 hours with HDR off. You get a little bump in performance there, but this is all max resolution of the screen. I'm not lowering the resolution of the screen at all. This is max resolution of the screen and max playback from YouTube. Now, battery life when gaming. That is the thing that everyone keeps asking me about. Now, there's two ways of going about this. You can use the discrete GPU, the 4070, or you can use the iGPU. And let's just say that I had a great time testing this one out. So as far as my testing goes with battery life, with the discrete GPU, I tested only graphically intensive games. As far as the iGPU goes, I tested those same games plus a couple of like emulation or retro games, and this is where I landed. So on battery and using the discrete GPU, I had HDR off, the screen brightness set to 50, and I pretty much had the volume still at 25. Expect just under 2 hours. Now, this is huge because playing games like Elden Ring or Cyberpunk, Elden Ring I was pretty much stable at 60 FPS. Now, you're between 58 and 60, 58 and 60, but pretty much stable 60 FPS. This is max resolution. I did not change the resolution of this screen at all. So playing Elden Ring, max resolution, it was absolutely phenomenal. Now, what about the battery while gaming on the iGPU? This is something I've never experienced before, and I'm happy to say that, once again, expect greatness. Now, as far as TDP goes, I set the power profile to performance within Armoury Crate. Performance is a mixture between battery efficiency and performance. So you will notice that the PC will kind of optimize in a game, but then after a while it sticks to 1 wattage. All of these tests are done with low settings and at 1200p resolution. So with these settings, expect just under 2 hours of gameplay. Now, let me remind you, this is on an iGPU. It's running typically at 28 watts. So 28 watts. Now, I know some people might say, well, the battery's huge, it's 90 watt hours, but you are maintaining really good FPS. So it's about 110 plus minutes on graphically intensive games. So games like Elden Ring and Cyberpunk, you're gonna get about 2 hours on this massive laptop. Once again, HDR is off, RGB is off, ray tracing is off. I have very low settings here and low system settings as well. Now FPS is going to vary between games, but in Elden Ring, I was getting between 50 and 60 FPS with these settings. And occasionally there were some dips into the 40s. Lastly, you can go into Armoury Crate and change the TDP. You can change it to something like 20 watts and get crazy good battery life. But as far as my testing and how I normally played it, I usually put it in performance profile because it was kind of the great balance between 1200p and good FPS and good game time. Now, as far as retro games and emulation, pretty much double what I said before. You're gonna get about 4 hours. Remember, this is low power stuff. This is less demanding games, less graphically intensive. So once again, expect 4 hours for those types of games. Now, if you want to get crazy good battery life, you could lower your resolution to like 800p or even 1000p and, you know, low graphics settings, set your TDP to 20 watts. But I don't think that's going to be a very good experience, especially on this big screen. Now, if you did 800p, it's going to not look great, especially at low settings. But you're going to get some decent FPS, not anything crazy, but it's definitely playable, but I wouldn't recommend doing that. Now, what about thermals? Expect 34 degrees Celsius at idle. This laptop has such great thermals. I was actually really surprised. That tri-fan technology that's in here does a really good job at getting the hardware cooler, but I will say there is some heat coming off of this. I never saw the CPU go above 80 degrees Celsius. For the most part, it's anywhere between 50 and 70 degrees Celsius. It can get to like the mid 70s sometimes, depending on the games that you're playing. As far as the GPU goes, expect about 10 degrees Celsius lower than the CPU. That's pretty much what I saw on average. Now do yourself a favor. When you're gaming on this laptop, remember that this laptop is so low profile, it doesn't have like really big stands on the bottom of it, and a lot of the airflow is coming through the bottom. So to optimize better airflow, I suggest getting one of these like silicone props. I'll put a link in the description of this video for this one. This really helps out. Even just by raising it up by an inch, you're really gonna get better thermals, and it's not gonna be hot in your lap if you're plugged in. So the reason why this review took a lot longer than all my other products is because I ran into some problems. When I first opened up this laptop, I discovered that there is a second SSD slot. Now, of course, the first thing I did, 990 Pro, put it in there, 2 terabyte, thinking, oh, it's gonna be 3 terabyte. Nope. The max storage capacity of this laptop is 2 terabytes. Now, the reason why I kind of discovered something was off here is because I installed Samsung Magician, which allows me to update firmware and check thermals of a Samsung SSD card, or pretty much any SSD card. And I just happened to go to the device kind of interface settings, and I discovered that the SSD was running at 4x2, which is not the full speed. So when I ran like benchmarks, I was getting like 3,500 megabytes per second, which isn't right. Now, after some investigation and a lot of Reddit posts, I actually ended up reaching out to ASUS because I thought this was really weird. Now, what I got back from ASUS was incorrect information. Now, because this laptop only supports 2 terabytes of storage, I was essentially having too much storage. So I added a 2 terabyte on top of the 1 terabyte that was already in the device. And the ASUS tech said that the reason why it was running at 4x2 was because the max capacity was 2 terabyte. Now I can confirm that that is wrong information. After tons of trial and error, I took out SSD card after SSD card and tested, reinstalled Windows, and did so many other things. I discovered that the second SSD slot is 4x2. So it essentially runs at half speed. If you're going to upgrade this laptop, do not expect to put your fastest SSD card in that second slot. What I did is I ultimately ended up going for 2 terabytes and putting it in the main slot so that it can run at max speed. Now, to me, this is a problem because it doesn't say anywhere on the website that this does not have 2 PCI 4.0 ports. There's nothing on there. It should at least say the second one runs at half speed, but it doesn't. So to me, you got to be a little bit more transparent than that, ASUS. But at the end of the day, you know, I fixed the problem. Now, another problem I had was all of a sudden my applications weren't working. I would do pretty much anything, and then I would get an error code saying VC runtime 140.dll, basically saying to me that it was missing and it would benefit me if I tried to install it again to fix this problem. Now, once again, after a bunch of Reddit posts and a bunch of readings, I figured out how to fix this. Basically, just go into the settings within Windows, go to apps, and scroll down to C++ and hit modify. You're gonna wanna look for the x64. It's usually like the first one you see. So C++, x64, you're gonna hit modify, and then it's gonna basically say install. Just go ahead and restall it. Once you do that, completely fixes everything. Now, I've done multiple fresh installs on this device, and this has happened to me twice. I have no idea why this happened. This could be an ASUS thing, and it could be a Windows thing. I'm thinking it's a Windows thing because of there was an update, but can't really pinpoint it. It was a problem for me. It didn't work right out of the box. Another problem is that this was freezing a lot on the first boot of a lot of applications. So when I was doing benchmarking, it froze the computer completely. When I was doing 3D Mark, it froze the computer completely when I would open up things like Steam. Now after running things like dsim.exe or SFC scan now to check for any corruptions or anything like that, the problem seems to have fixed itself. I have not run into that problem since, but I would recommend searching up the SFC scan now command within, on Google and running that, as well as the dsim.exe whole command within command prompt, and see if you have a what they call corrupted version of Windows. Now, the biggest problem I had was I had this laptop for a few days and it pretty much was plugged in for the first 2 days. No problems at all, was running great. I was testing out games. I was having an amazing time, put like maybe 5 hours into gaming. Now, all of a sudden, I unplugged the laptop, shut it off. The next day, I went to go turn the laptop back on, wouldn't turn on at all. I was like, what the heck? Maybe I forgot to turn it off and the battery drained or something, which is kind of weird, but it happens sometimes. I wasn't sure of what the battery percentages was when I shut it off, or thought I shut it off. So I couldn't get it to turn back on. So I plugged it back in, pressed the power button, and it turned it right back on. Now, my first initial thought was, holy crap, I got a unit that has a bad battery. Well, that wasn't true. When you unplug the laptop for the first time, the laptop automatically goes into silent mode, or the silent performance profile within Armory Crate. For whatever reason, if you turn the computer off while you're in that silent performance profile, the computer will not turn back on. You have to plug it back in and hit power. I only discovered this after maybe about 8 hours of figuring out what was going on, fresh installing Windows, and I just happened to just take a guess. So if you're on battery, make sure to set it into the performance profile with Armory Crate and turn it off then. It will boot up every single time, no problem. If you leave it in silent, it's not gonna turn back on. Let's get into some benchmarks. In Cyberpunk, I did some benchmarking, and once again, this is max resolution. I didn't mess with the resolution at all, and if you did that, you can expect much more performance out of this, but I did not do that. I wanted to test max resolution. In the ultra settings preset and in the benchmark, we scored 44 FPS on average. The medium preset, we got an average about 57, and surprisingly, we got about an average of 57 in the low quality preset. As far as Timespy goes, we got an amazing score of 12,047, putting it between the 3060 Ti and 3070 Ti, and let's not forget, these are desktop GPUs. In 3D Mark CPU profile, we got a benchmark score of 10,303, compared to the Intel Core Ultra 9 185H, which was the previous version, had an average score of 7,871, with a high score of 9,039, which means that the Ryzen AI HX 370 absolutely destroys the Intel chip, even when the Intel chip is having a good day. In Cinebench, we got a CPU multi-score of 1,165, putting it above the Ryzen 7 5800X desktop CPU. In single core performance benchmark, we got a score of 116, besting out the 12-core Apple M1 chip. Gaming while playing Overwatch was absolutely amazing, especially on battery. I was getting over 120 FPS. I was in like 130. Once again, this is max resolution, and I was on medium graphic settings. Now, these benchmarks are absolutely amazing. I don't normally do this many benchmarks, but I figure I had to because I'm the first that I know of on YouTube doing a full review on this laptop. So what are my likes and my dislikes? Here we go. Let's start with the likes. This thing charges super fast. It can charge 100% in 1 hour. Now, in the scheme of things, let's say you're out and about and you're at school or something and you wanted to play games and you got about 2 hours, maybe even a little bit more of game time, and you charge it for 1 hour, that's absolutely amazing. You can go back to schoolwork, which you're gonna get a lot better battery life because you're just doing web browsing or typing up things. It's absolutely amazing. I will say my first like is the ability to charge super fast. I think everybody knows I'm gonna say one of my likes is this display. The 2.5K 240 hertz display is phenomenal. I mean, even with HDR off, it's great. The HDR on, blacks are black, colors are so crisp, it's so vibrant, it's absolutely amazing. It's really good. These ROG Nebula displays are killer. ASUS really does make the best displays. And of course, one of the likes of mine is the gaming experience. Whether I'm plugged in or not, it is absolutely amazing. Playing games while plugged in is insane. Playing games while on battery is also pretty insane. I wasn't expecting it to be this good, but at the same time, I have to expect it because the G14 was amazing. Why shouldn't the G16 with this chip be even better? Another like of mine is this absolutely massive trackpad. It is huge. Compared to the G14, it's like 2 times the size. It's pretty nice. It's really smooth as well. Another like of mine is also this keyboard. It has pretty good travel, making it feel really good. I actually will say the G16 keyboard feels a lot better than the G14. Another like of mine is the thermals. Even when plugged in and I'm feeling a lot of heat from it, the thermals of the actual hardware are really good. Now, when it's on battery, you can't feel the heat on this at all. Yeah, sure, there is a little bit of a hot spot on the bottom of it when it's on battery, but it's not nearly as bad as when it's plugged in because it's pulling less power. Now, but aside from that, you can't feel any heat really on the top of the device. Maybe like skin temperature warmness, but not anything crazy. But as far as the hardware goes, the thermals are great. It's not the worst laptop. It's also not the best laptop I've ever seen as far as thermals go, but the thermals are really nice and I like it. So what are my dislikes? I do have some of them. Now, when it's plugged in, it does cause 2 things to happen to this laptop, and 2 of them are because of that. When it's plugged in, it can get a little loud. Not insanely loud, but loud enough to where I wouldn't want it to be plugged in and have max settings on everything playing next to my wife who's sleeping in bed. Not a good idea. It's pretty loud, it's gonna wake her up. There's no terrible whining or anything, so that's a good thing. I've heard some people complain about like the G14 or the G16 with the tri-fan technology, saying there's like a lot of whining. To me, it's not like it's unbearable when it's like max fans, but once again, the fans are kind of loud. And while plugged in, it gets a little hot. Naturally, there is a hot spot on the bottom of this device where the heat pipes are connecting the 2 larger fans underneath it. If you do take apart this, you will notice the 2 larger fans and the heat pipes in the middle in this version. That is naturally a hot spot. On battery, it's not terrible, but when plugged in, it can get pretty damn hot. You're not gonna wanna really put this on your lap for a long period of time while it's plugged in. It's gonna get kind of hot. On a desk, much better. On a desk propped up, even better. But even when it's plugged in, it gets hot on the surface too, like the keyboard and stuff like that. Not like insanely hot, like, ooh, like I don't even wanna touch this thing. But if you're like maxing out the settings, it gets a little warm, and I'm not a huge fan of that. The G14 did a way better version here. My other dislikes are all those other problems I mentioned before, the whole SSD thing and ASUS telling me the wrong information, some of the software issues like C++, the whole like I couldn't turn my laptop back on type situation. Those are all things that I count as dislikes as well. And like I said before, I had to do several fresh installs, especially when swapping SSDs and trying to figure out the problems and all these software issues. That's a major dislike of mine. I have to mention again the whole freezing thing that happened. It happened a lot, and finding out that I had to run SFC scan now and the DSIM.exe to kind of fix that issue. That's not like an out-of-the-box experience. It happened to me multiple times. All these things that I'm mentioning here, these were problems when I pulled it out of the box. It wasn't good. But I got it working, and I'm hoping that you guys, when you guys buy this, or if you do buy this, you can watch this video and you can not have these problems, you can fix them, and you can enjoy your laptop. The last dislike that I had was a weird network problem. I was playing Overwatch and I was like not having a good time. I would get lost connections, and ultimately what I had to do was reset the network settings. It wasn't a huge problem because it's usually something that I do automatically. I don't know why. It's just like a habit of mine. When I fresh install Windows, I get into Microsoft, I like pull a bunch of programs, I delete them, all that stuff. And then one of the things I do naturally is I reset the network and I kind of start over again. And for some reason, it's just something I do. And for some reason, I didn't do it this time. And when I did it after I was having problems with Overwatch, it worked flawlessly. The last dislike I have, and it's the same with the G14, is ASUS went with this like aluminum body, which feels really nice. It feels really premium, but it's kind of a fingerprint magnet. Now, normally I wipe my computers down, I wipe my products down before I put them on YouTube, but because it's a dislike of mine and I wanted to show you guys, it does have some fingerprints on it. Because this thing loves fingerprints. So, which should you pick between the G14 with the 8945HS or the G16 with the new Ryzen AI HX370? Well, surprisingly, they're like the same price, if not like this is like $100 cheaper than what I paid for the G14. Once again, they both have the fingerprint problem. But I will say this, the G14 worked way better out of the box. Now I did have a weird FPS issue, but a BIOS update fixed that. And I haven't had any problems with this thing since. It runs really good. It's way cooler to the touch than this one. Now the G16, where it kind of beats it is it's bigger, it's faster, it's just better. And when you get everything running right, it's so good. The 16-inch display compared to the 14-inch display, you really don't notice a huge difference in weight. It's not like you're really going to care about that. But man, if this thing worked this good out of the box, this would be the best laptop of all time. I think it's there. I think though ASUS needs to fix some of the problems that came straight out of the box. Once again, this is pretty new. But I think if you waited a little bit and then you bought this after they fixed some of those problems, I would probably say this is the best gaming laptop you can buy right now, and you're probably really, really gonna enjoy it. Now I know what you're thinking, there's a lot more dislikes than likes, but the likes definitely outweigh the dislikes. I don't hate this laptop in any way, I just kind of didn't like how it didn't work that great out of the box. But once I fixed everything, I've been gaming with a smile on my face the whole time. Just remember that it does require a little bit of TLC. Now, the ASUS Zephyrus G16 isn't the most powerful gaming laptop out there, especially with these versions. It goes up to a 4070. Last year, the 2023, they went up to like 4090s. There's one thing though, there is two versions available as far as this one has the heat pipes as far as cooling, and then there's other versions that have the vapor chamber. You can't order those ones right now. I'm assuming they're gonna come out in some point in time, but I think it's kind of weird that they didn't give you that option right away. But like I said, this isn't the most powerful gaming laptop there is. I think it might be the most beautiful gaming laptop there is, especially for the 16-inchers. But remember that what you're trading in performance, you're gaining in power efficiency and the aesthetics. So to me, I don't need the most powerful gaming laptop there is. I have desktop setups, I have handhelds. I just want a really good gaming laptop. And having two of the best I think you can have, I will say that I highly recommend this to everyone. Now, a little bit of forewarning. When you go and upgrade your SSD, the back plate or the bottom plate of it is very fragile. Do not put too much effort into taking that off. What you're gonna wanna use is you're gonna wanna use like a spudger tool or like a thick guitar pick or something, and just slowly work your way around. The first time you take this bottom plate off, you are going to feel like you're gonna break it. It's okay. I recommend opening it from front to back. Don't bend sideways, because I did bend slightly the bottom plate on this because it is aluminum. So once again, take your time, work around, kind of twist your spudger tool or your pick or whatever else you have, kind of twist it to pop each clip, work your way around the front towards the back, and like I said, lift from front to back. Once you do it the first time, it gets easier every single time. And as somebody who literally swapped like 6 SSDs in this thing back and forth to both slots and figuring out which one I wanted to do, I got pretty used to it, and it gets easier every single time. But the first time you do it, you're gonna feel like you're gonna break this thing. So just a little bit of a forewarning, don't be scared, but take your time and go slow. So can I recommend this? Absolutely yes. Should you buy it? Maybe wait like a couple of weeks. I think you're gonna wanna wait for some of those updates from ASUS and Windows, and maybe a BIOS update too, to kind of iron out some of those rough edges that I had. Now, if you wanna buy it now, go for it. Watch the video, use some of the fixes that I found, and you're gonna have a great time. But if you don't wanna fuss with any of that, maybe wait a few weeks and then buy it. So what's the last thing I'm gonna say about this laptop? The ASUS ROG Zephyrus G16 GA605 with the Ryzen 9 AI HX 370 is perhaps one of the greatest gaming laptops of all time. Should you buy it? Yes. Maybe you should wait a little bit. But at the end of the day, it is so awesome, and you're really going to enjoy this. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it took a lot of time to do this video, but I ran into a lot of problems, and I found all the fixes. I did a lot of benchmarking. I did a lot of tests because I wanted to be very thorough. So I was the first one to unbox this on YouTube, and I'm hoping as of right now, I am the first one to do a full review and benchmarks on this laptop. So hopefully by the time I get this out, I'll still be the first, but I really appreciate all of your guys' comments and everything that I've been getting, all the feedback. Since my last video, the unboxing of this laptop, I've gained a lot more subscribers. I want to keep doing these videos. I want to help inform you guys of new products, what to buy, what not to buy, and have better information and be more informed to buy those things or not buy them. Please like and subscribe. I want to keep doing this. I have a lot more products coming in. That being said, lastly, I'm Cameron, and this is Gamer vs. Tech.